to Couch Casual, where today we are going to be recapping day one of free agency. I know this video is coming out late and we're already halfway through or whatever through day two of free agency, but I wasn't able to get to talking about all the moves. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to try and go fast because there is a lot to get through. We're even, as you can see by the first post here, even going to talk about some of the trades that happened before free agency that I also didn't get a chance to talk to. And that first one is the Chiefs trading Trent McDuffie to the Rams in exchange for the Rams' first round pick number 29, a fifth, a sixth, and next year's third. Now this on the Chiefs side of things, this felt like a cap casualty. Like they just needed to clear up money. Trent McDuffie is one of the better corners in the league, in my opinion. I don't think that's a hot take or anything. And the Rams desperately needed help at corner. It was one of the, if you had to, out of all the teams that were really good, like the playoff teams, this might have been the biggest need of any really good team, and that was the Rams getting corner help. And they get one of the best corners in the league, and they still keep pick 13, I think they got from the Falcons. So you still have a first round pick, and you get one of the best corners at a position they desperately need. And for the Chiefs thing, now, when this trade initially happened, I'm like, well, they probably are keeping Jaylen Watson then, but we'll get to Jaylen Watson eventually going to the Rams as well. But overall, I love this move for the Rams. And then for the Chiefs, now that they lost McDuffie and again Jaylen Watson, they lost in free agency, we'll have to see what they do at the secondary because they don't have a lot. They also lost Brian Cook to Cincinnati. They did bring another safety who I think we'll get to later. But if they can add some corner help, I know they got Noel Williams, I think, from Cal. He's pretty good. Yeah, he was good for a late round rookie. So we'll have to see for the Chiefs side of things what they do later. But for the Rams side, I absolutely love this trade. Next, we have the Patriots release Stephon Diggs. Probably has to do with all the off the field stuff going on. They need to add some receiver help. They have a ton of money to do, so they still could be in the market for AJ Brown. We'll see where Diggs goes. Again, if you want to exclude the off the field stuff, he's still a very good, reliable veteran receiver. So we'll see what happens with him and I guess his whole situation. And then the next big trade that happened before free agency is the Bills trading for DJ Moore. It's not on here, but they gave up a second round pick, I believe it was. I think that's the trade. I think it's a second round pick. Let me just quickly. Yeah, they gave up a second round pick and got DJ Moore and a fifth in exchange. I like it for the Bills. Now they did give up a second, obviously, and I think they're taking in most of his salary, which is a decent. He's making a decent chunk of money. But Josh Allen desperately needed somebody at receiver that wasn't named Khalil Shakir, because outside of the up in the air piece that is Keon Coleman, they don't have a lot outside of Shakir. So I really like this move for them as long as DJ Moore can still be a top 20-ish receiver like I think he can be. And on the Bears side of things, I actually really like this trade too. You have Rome Odunze, you have Luther Burden, who are two really good young receivers. DJ Moore, honestly, for most of the regular season, wasn't really getting thrown to. For whatever reason, it was really Rome Odunze's team. You also have your two tight ends, Komet and Loveland, and he only really started getting a lot of targets towards like the playoffs. So it feels like they were kind of already phasing him out of the offense to begin with. And you can get a second round pick out of him, you can get off his contract, and you can now focus around Odunze and Luther Burden and add maybe a third or fourth receiver just for depth purposes. But I like this trade for both sides. Bills desperately need some help at receiver. They get a very good one. The Bears can now focus around Luther Burden, Rome Odunze, and get a second round pick. And for DJ Moore's sake, he gets to be the clear number one receiver on a Super Bowl contending team. Next, yeah, there it is. Second round pick. and the Bears also got a fifth. Next, this all happened during like the combine. We got the Rams re-signing Tyler Higbee. They have Terrence Ferguson there as well at tight end. It's a solid two-man tight end room. Makes sense. 2 years, $8 million. I think is very good value for the Rams, bringing back Tyler Higbee. Texans extending Danielle Hunter, one of the best edge rushers in all of football. $40 million a year. It's a lot of money, but I think he's well worth that money. The Bears released Tremaine Edmonds, I think for salary cap purposes. He ended up signing somewhere, which we'll get to. Rams, of course, extended Cam Curl. The Raiders released Geno Smith. I don't know if this post is going to be on here, but they eventually just traded him to the Jets. So we'll see what happens with that. Alec Ingold got released. Patriots brought back Tommy DeVito. The Texans' whole situation with Joe Mixon was weird with his whole foot injury, but he's gone. They also traded for David Montgomery, which I guess was below the Trent McDuffie trade. I like that for Houston. They didn't give up that much. They gave up Juice Scruggs and like a fifth, I think it was, for David Montgomery, who was one of the best, if not the best, backup running backs in the league. And now he gets to be a true number one running back in Houston alongside Woody Marks. I like that trade. And Detroit now can focus their whole rushing offense around Jahmyr Gibbs. Dalton Schultz gets a nice extension. The Bears trade for Garrett Bradbury. Drew Dalman had his out of nowhere retirement, which kind of left the Bears in a hole at center because they invested so much in the offensive line. It paid off, but then they lose Drew Dalman out of a sudden retirement, and so they make a move for us. Garrett Bradbury is not as good as Drew Dalman, but he's a very serviceable center. Not the best center because you saw the Patriots O-line wasn't that good this season, but he's not a horrible center. He's better than what they had post Drew Dalman retirement, so it's good to just get something at the center position if you're Chicago, but you definitely wish you had Drew Dalman. And for the Patriots, I think it's their O-line underperformed and didn't play well last year. It makes sense to try and change things because the O-line they had clearly did not work. Obviously, the Max Crosby trade, there's a whole another like 11-minute video on my channel that I posted about the Max Crosby trade. If you want to hear my thoughts about that, we're going to get a lot of Max Crosby. Jordan Davis got a nice extension. The Colts and Packers. Colts trade Zaire Franklin to Green Bay for Colby Wooden going to Indiana. Quay Walker was a free agent. It didn't seem like he was going to re-sign with the Packers. He did not end up re-signing with the Packers. Packers get themselves a solid replacement in Zaire Franklin, and the Colts get a pretty solid defensive tackle in Colby Wooden. Chargers re-signed Khalil Mack to a one-year deal, and they obviously let Odafe Oweh go. Trent McDuffie, after getting traded to the Rams, got an extension to be the highest paid corner at $31 million a year. Again, is he the best corner in football? I don't think so, but he's one of the best, and when you're one of the best at your position, a recent extension is just going to make you the highest paid at your position. That's just what happens. So Trent McDuffie, I'm not going to overreact to him being the highest paid corner because he deserves to be one of the highest paid, and since he's the most recent, he's going to be the highest paid. Alec Ingold goes to Harbaugh's offense in the Chargers at fullback, one of the only fullbacks left in the league. Then this kind of happened out of nowhere. Bills trade Taron Johnson to the Raiders. I like Taron Johnson. And the Bills have an interesting secondary. I'm not sure how much I'm in love with the Bills secondary, especially now that they trade Taron Johnson. I mean, Taron Johnson was one of the best nickel corners in the league, and the Raiders now get him on top of all the other money they spent, which we'll get to. I don't know how I like this trade for the Bills, but I really like it for the Raiders. Tua got released officially, so the Dolphins, they're like, oh, the Dolphins are trying to find a trade partner for Tua. Who's going to trade for Tua in that contract? We saw that he ended up signing with the Falcons for like a vet minimum. If I'm the Falcons, I'm not going to trade draft capital to bring in Tua for all that money when I could just sign him for literally $5. So I had zero faith that the Dolphins were going to be able to trade Tua. They end up having to cut him. It's like $100 million in like uh, dead cap that they had to take in by releasing Tua. Then free agency officially started with player movement on the 9th, yesterday, at the time of recording this video, on the 10th at about 3 p.m. So if anything happens afterwards, that's why I didn't get to it. But we will be doing a team-by-team breakdown once free agency and the offseason kind of dies down. But the Dolphins traded Minkah to the Jets for just a 7. Now I know Minkah is not the safety he was when he was first on Miami and when he first went to Pittsburgh. I know he's not the same caliber player that he was earlier in his career, but a 7th round pick seems almost disrespectful to trade Minkah for. You could only get him for a 7th. You traded Jalen Ramsey for him, and you get back a 7th a year later. I mean, if I'm the Jets, this is the easiest trade to do because guess what? If Minkah doesn't play well, who cares? You gave up a 7th. And maybe he can get them an interception because they've been needing some guys to get them interceptions. This is an absolute low risk, any type of reward move for the Jets. You literally gave up nothing. And if you're Miami, it's basically the equivalent of cutting him. You just got something in return. Then a big move happened. Now, there was all the Rashawn Gary stuff that they are going to move on from him. So we knew he was going to get traded or maybe even released earlier than this trade, but we didn't know where he would get traded to. Ends up going to the Cowboys. So the Cowboys and Packers basically just extended the Micah Parsons trade, and it ended up being just a swap of Gary and Parsons with some picks involved. I mean, I don't hate this for the Cowboys. Obviously, he's not Micah Parsons, but at least you get a very talented pass rusher to replace Micah Parsons. Because Rashawn Gary is still very good. He's no Micah Parsons, but he's a very good pass rusher. So the Dallas has something on that defensive line alongside Kenny Clark. Oh, sorry, Kenny Clark was in that trade. So Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary are now a Cowboy, and Micah Parsons is now a Packer. And the Cowboys also have a ton of picks, too. I wonder if any of those picks got used to get Rashawn Gary. But I like it for the Cowboys' perspective. I don't actually know the compensation of the trade. I'll have to quickly. I know I'm going through these fast, but got a lot to talk about. All we know is that it's a late round pick in 2027. Schefter says that the Cowboys acquired Rashawn Gary for a late round pick in 2027. It's a 4th round pick. So the Cowboys gave up a 4th for Rashawn Gary. I think you do that, especially considering you trade away Micah Parsons. I think you do that 10 times out of 10 for a guy like Rashawn Gary. And if you're the Packers, it seems like you're going to lose him anyway, so 4th isn't horrible. Maybe you would have liked like a 3rd round pick in return, but I feel like when it becomes obvious a player is going to get traded, their value obviously declines. So to get a 4th round pick isn't the end of the world. It's not great if you're Green Bay. You're obviously hoping Micah Parsons can bounce back from his injury. Maybe you can get something out of Lucas Van Ness next season. Maybe he now steps up into that role alongside Micah Parsons because you're going to need that guy next to him. Then Sheldon Rankins re-signs with the Texans. Solid D tackle. I still think they need to address interior defensive tackle, interior defensive line in the draft. There's some good players available at their late 1st round pick. So I think they still should get a guy next to him, but a solid player nonetheless. Travis Kelce coming back for one last season, it seems like, with the Chiefs. They brought Eric Bieniemy back. Mahomes looked like he's going to be healthy for the start of the season. And maybe they can get Tyreek Hill. But Travis Kelce comes back for one last season. Alec Pierce gets extended by the Colts on a 4-year, $114 million contract extension. That's a lot of money for Alec Pierce, I can't lie. Now, it's probably, and the crazy thing is, he took a pay cut. Not a pay cut, maybe not the wrong word, but he took less money to go to the Colts than what he was getting offered by teams like, I think like Washington was in the market for him. Because he took 4 years, 114. I think those other teams are giving him like $30 million a year. So he took less money to go to the Colts, and it's still a lot of money. I like Alec Pierce. He had a career year last year. Seems like him and Daniel Jones developed a nice connection. They obviously brought Daniel Jones back as well on the transition tag. I still don't know what that means. But it is a lot of money for Alec Pierce. We'll get to what they did later to sort of help free up this money because Alec Pierce is kind of the guy there. They don't have A.D. Mitchell anymore. They kind of gave up on that. It's just him and Josh Downs. So I do think they need to add another receiver. But it is a lot of money, but Alec Pierce is a good player. He's worth getting paid and staying on the Colts. It does seem like a lot of money. Then bringing him back, I really like that decision. The money they paid him, not so much, but it seems like if they wanted to keep him back or bring him back, they had to pay him around this type of money because if they paid him like 4 years, $100 million, that's $10 million less per year than he was getting from their teams. He probably would have left. So this is the only way they could keep him. So I feel like that justifies it a little bit more just because it's what they had to do to bring him back, but it still does feel like a lot of money. Then the first big move free agency signing of the offseason of a player switching teams was Olamide Zaccheaus going back to Atlanta. Not too much to say. He's a solid rotational depth receiver. I don't know. He's just a good player. Nothing too special about Zaccheaus, but if you're forced to throw him on the field and play him for a drive or two or a game or two, it's not the end of the world. So I don't hate the signing, especially because I doubt it cost them a lot of money. Then we have the Patriots bringing in Draymond Jones on a 3-year, $40 million deal. I like this move. I like Draymond Jones. Patriots needed some pass rush help, especially with the looming free agency of Kayvon Chaisson. Because outside of him, they needed somebody. So I like Draymond Jones. Bring him in. $10 million per year is really nothing for an edge rusher. We just saw Danielle Hunter. I know Danielle Hunter is one of the best in the league, but he just got paid 40 per year. Draymond Jones is getting 10 per year. He's getting less over 3 years than Hunter is getting over 1 year. Next, we have the Raiders bringing back Eric Stokes. I really like this move. Stokes had one of his best years, and the Raiders, they have the money to spend. $10 million per year is pretty solid. 3 years, $30 million. Oh, Draymond didn't get. I did the math wrong. He got 340, not 330. But Eric Stokes, I like the move. If you're the Raiders, no reason to let him walk. You have the money. He's not going to cost you a ton. And if you're Eric Stokes, the Raiders look like they're building something with the money they're spending. And you had your best year in the Raiders. I think it made sense for both sides. Then the big news, the first really big news, is Kenneth Walker going to the Chiefs. The contract details might be later. I mean, for the Chiefs side, I like this move, right? Now, who knows what happens with Jeremiah Love? I have no idea where he's going to get drafted now. It is a decent amount of money the Chiefs spent to get Kenneth Walker, but he's really good. They're trying to establish a run game, which they haven't had under Mahomes in forever, since like rookie Kareem Hunt and Jamal Charles. But Jamal Charles didn't even play with Mahomes. They needed something in that run game. You bring in the Super Bowl MVP. Mahomes is coming back. You got Kelsey back. And for the Seahawks side of things, I mean, when Charbonnet was healthy, Kenneth Walker wasn't the workhorse guy. He was splitting reps with Charbonnet. And do you want to pay a running back $15 million per year? I think it was, when you don't even play him like a true number one running back. I just don't think they were able to afford him, considering how many free agents they had. They still ended up losing other guys, but considering how many free agents they had, they couldn't afford to bring back Kenneth Walker, especially when you have a very good backup in Zach Charbonnet. So I think it makes. I wish the Seahawks were able to keep him and I think they wanted to keep him, but I think it makes sense to let him walk. And the Chiefs, I think it's a signing worth taking a chance on because they just need something in that run game. Bucks bring back Kate on. I thought he was going to leave, but if he left, they needed to bring in a new tight end because they don't really have a lot at tight end. Who knows? Maybe they're out of the sweepstakes of drafting Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon because of this. But Kate On's a fine tight end, so I think it's a good re-sign for Tampa. Yeah, there it is. 3 years, $45 million for Kenneth Walker, so 15 per year. Then, as we mentioned earlier, not only did the Rams trade for Trent McDuffie, but they also took Jaylen Watson. I really like Jaylen Watson. He had a very good year last year with the Chiefs, especially considering he's not the number one corner, like having him not as your number one, and you still get to do that because he's still playing with Trent McDuffie. 3 years, $51 million. They needed help at that cornerback room so bad, considering how good they are. They needed help at corner, and they got one of the better corner duos in football. They got them both, Trent McDuffie and Jaylen Watson, completely revamped that secondary, and of course they also extended Cam Curl earlier as well. I love this move for the Rams, and again on the Chiefs side, you lose McDuffie, you lose Watson. The only way I can really see how I like this from the Chiefs side, I need to see what they do to address the cornerback position going forward. If they don't get good corners, I'm going to question letting both of these guys go to the Rams. But if they can get some solid corners on some better deals, maybe draft a guy, I don't think it's the end of the world for the Chiefs to move on from them too. Then the Panthers signed edge rusher, linebacker, whatever, Jaelan Phillips to a big contract, 4 years, $120 million. It's a lot of money, $30 million per year for Jaelan Phillips. But I mean, the Panthers aren't this big destination, right? Like you're not going to just easily convince guys to come play for the Panthers. I know they're ascending, right, and they're going in the right direction, but it's still not the biggest market, and they're still not a premier Super Bowl contender. So they still need to pay a lot of money, especially when you're trying to take a guy from Jaelan Phillips away from Philly. Because it's one thing to take a player from a bad team to a solid team like the Panthers are, but you're taking him away from a good team, a Super Bowl contending team. So there's likely had to be the money they had to pay him to take him away from Philly. Because I thought he was going to stay in Philly, and maybe that was the case. Maybe Philly gave him like $25 million per year, and then the Panthers decided we're going to give him 30 per year, and that's what it took. He does have some injury concerns, but if he can be healthy, I think this is a good move for the Panthers because they needed help at that pass rush position so bad. Like all the improvements they made as a team, making the playoffs, whatever, they still couldn't sack anybody. And while Jaelan Phillips only had 5 sacks last year, he got a ton of pressure. So if he can convert those into sacks, and if he can stay healthy, I think it's a good move for the Panthers to bring in Jaelan Phillips. Despite it being a slight overpay, I think it's what they had to do to bring talent in, and he is an upgrade, an easy upgrade over what they had already. Then we talked about how the Colts moved on from Michael Pittman. This is the trade. They bring in Alec Pierce, and in order to maybe free up some money or not have so much money invested in two receivers, they move on from Michael Pittman, send him to Pittsburgh. If trading Michael Pittman is what it took for the Colts to bring back Alec Pierce, I don't hate it, although I still think they should add some receivers to that receiver room. I don't hate it. If you could have kept both pretty easily, I think you maybe should have, but I doubt they could have. I doubt they could have kept Pierce and Pittman, or at least I doubt it would make sense for them to keep both of them. So they decide to stick with Alec Pierce. They move Michael Pittman to Pittsburgh, and on Pittsburgh's side of things, I like it. Now, how good of a fit is he alongside DK Metcalf? I don't really know. I feel like they need more like speed and like elite route running at that receiver room instead of just uh, big guys that can catch the ball. Because obviously we all know Metcalf is fast, but I'm talking like, well, they had Calvin Austin. That's what I'm talking about. A guy like that. Michael Pittman's 6'4", 220. So possession, big receiver. I don't know if he really fits what they're looking for, but why I'm okay with it is I doubt it costs them that much to trade for him. You just need something. You can't roll out with DK Metcalf and nothing because I think Calvin Austin might be a free agent. Who knows if Adam Thielen's going to play football again? It was really just DK Metcalf. Now you could draft a receiver, but outside of that, they didn't have anybody. So this just at least gives them somebody for whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, whether it's Will Howard or something else. It gives them something. So I actually really like it for Pittsburgh. I think it's a low risk, high reward type of trade. And for Indy, if they had to do it to get Pierce, I think it is worth it. Because I think they should keep, if they had to only choose between one, I think choosing Pierce makes sense. Then we get Malik Willis going to the Dolphins on a 3-year, just under $70 million contract. I'm not sure on this signing. I really like Malik Willis when he had to step in for Jordan Love, not only this season, but also last season when they went like 3-0 with him at quarterback. He played very well. I think he was one of the better backups in the league last year. Interesting timing that he decides to play really well on a contract year, but that's what he decided to do. And he got a big time contract because of it. If you're Miami, I think it's worth the shot, right? I think they obviously needed change at quarterback, right? So they move on from Tua. It gives them he has familiarity with Jeff Hatley, the coach, because he came from Green Bay. It just gives them something different, a different type of quarterback in that offense. And for that reason, I think it makes sense for Miami. I'm still a little questionable just because $70 million, 45 guaranteed for a backup quarterback. I don't think he's a bad. I think he can be a starting quarterback in this league. He's still super young as well. He was like drafted I think he was drafted in 2022. So he still has a lot of room to improve, and now he gets to be the quarterback to improve. Obviously, we knew the Packers weren't going to keep him if he's going to make this amount of money, so them letting him walk is a no-brainer. It's really just Miami picking him up. I don't hate it. I don't love it. We'll have to see. The Giants bring in Isaiah Likely on a 3-year, $40 million deal. It didn't seem like the Ravens were going to bring him back. They also lost Charlie Kolar, so it's really just Mark Andrews there at the tight end room. And for the Giants, I actually really like this. Now, I did think Jackson Dart and Theo Johnson were developing a little bit of a connection there. But Isaiah Likely's just a better tight end. He's a good blocking tight end as well. And it's not like Theo Johnson's just never going to see the field again because you bring in Isaiah Likely. He can still be your tight end too. He's a very solid tight end too. But you needed an upgrade at tight end. You needed that premier tight end. Isaiah Likely's been in that same tight end room with Mark Andrews his whole career. He hasn't really been able to be the guy. He gets a solid contract from the Giants, and now he can be that guy in New York with Jackson Dart, with Malik Nabers as pass catchers. I don't know if they still have Darius Slayton or not. But I like this move for the Giants. I think it's a good pickup. One of the better tight ends on the market. And I also just like how he has that blocking aspect that can help with not only Cam Skattebo, but also Jackson Dart as a scrambler as well. Then Demario Davis signs a 2-year deal to go back to the Jets. He got drafted by the Jets, went to the Saints, and now he's back on the Jets. Jets spent big money this offseason. Demario Davis, despite being like 50 years old, is still a very good player and still playing at a very high level, which is very impressive for Demario Davis, but he's still a very good linebacker. It's a 2-year deal worth $22 million. It's really nothing for the Jets, so I don't hate it. He can retire a Jet, play his last 2 years here, and try and help build something with that young team. Because I think the Jets have made some solid moves. Still don't know who their quarterback's going to be. They didn't get Tua. They didn't get Malik Willis. They traded for Geno Smith. I think you should still add another quarterback. Maybe Kyler goes to the Jets. But I like this move for Demario Davis. The Jets bringing Demario Davis. Titans get Mitch Trubisky. Very good backup quarterback, in my opinion. I think it's a good move. Not too much to talk about it because he's a backup quarterback, but you needed a backup quarterback outside of Cam Ward. And I think Mitch Trubisky is a very solid backup. Falcons bring Austin Hooper back. Again, good backup tight end, I guess. Buccaneers get Kenneth Gainwell on a 2-year, $14 million deal. Career year in Pittsburgh, sort of sharing the backfield with Jaylen Warren. Now he's sharing the backfield with Bucky Irving. I kind of liked his fit in Pittsburgh because Warren's a solid pass catcher, but he's more the physical runner. And Kenneth Gainwell was one of the last year he was like their best receiver. He's probably one of the better pass catching running backs in football. But I feel like Bucky Irving and Kenneth Gainwell are a little more similar than him and Jaylen Warren were. But if I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rachaad White's a free agent. I think they let Sean Tucker go as well. Kenneth Gainwell is a very good backup. I don't hate the move at all. And they also picked up Alex Anzalone from the Lions. They desperately needed linebacker help because I think Lavonte David's a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. But even if Lavonte David's still on the team, you still needed something because he's really old and you need something outside of him. Even if he was in his prime, you'd still want another guy next to him. You bring in Alex Anzalone, cheap contract, 2 years, very good linebacker. Love the move for Tampa Bay. Bears get Kobe Bryant from Seattle. Another Seahawk has left. First it was Kenneth Walker, and now it's Kobe Bryant. I really thought if the Seahawks were going to bring back one guy, it would be Kobe Bryant, just because he's really good. Him and Julian Love are a very good safety duo. But I guess there's some safeties that they could draft with their 32nd pick. There's the Toledo safety. The Oregon safety is probably going to be off the board, but there's some good safeties that they could take there at 32, I guess, and pair alongside Julian Love instead of paying Kobe Bryant. And on the Bears side, Brisker's a free agent. Kevin Byard's a free agent. So we had no idea what the Bears safety room was going to look like, whether they bring back Brisker and or bring back Byard and or sign another safety. They still could bring back one of the other two. But we know Kobe Bryant's one of the two safeties for Chicago. I really like this move for the Bears. I think he is better than the two safeties they had. And Kevin Byard's not going to cost a lot of money because he's on the older side. So I think they could bring back Kevin Byard and have him and Kobe Bryant be their two safeties. But overall, I think it's a good move for Chicago. Commanders get Amik Robertson from the Lions. 2 years, $16 million. He's all right. Not the best corner, not the most consistent corner, but not. PFF had him as like one of the worst corners, but that's PFF. He's all right. He's okay at best. They needed help at corner, so at least they got somebody because it's just Trey Amos and Sainer still because they cut Lattimore. They still need to add help to that corner room, that's for sure. There's still some really good corners, I'm pretty sure, available that they could get, but they have the money. They need to spend it on another corner. It can't just be Amik Robertson that they sign. Next is the Lions getting Cade Mays, Panthers center. I really like this move. It doesn't have the contract details up here, but I'm pretty sure they got him for like nothing. Really good center. Underrated center, in my opinion. It feels like the Panthers played much better when Cade Mays was out there. Lions desperately needed help at center. They need help. They need help all over the O-line outside of Penei Sewell, right? And you get one of the better centers on the market at a very good deal. I think it's an insanely good move by Detroit, and I think it sucks for the Panthers to not bring him back because they now need help at center. But the Lions, they now don't need help at center because they got Cade Mays. Next is Joseph Asai going to the Jets. Another big contract the Jets threw out. Osai's an all right player. Right? Nothing. I mean, he was a starter on the Bengals, so I don't know how much you trust his ability because the Bengals defense is never good. So if he's a starter on the Bengals defense, what does that say? I don't know. But the Jets gave him a 3-year, $36 million contract, $13 million per year. or 12. Yeah, 12 million per year for an edge rusher is really not that bad. They needed help at pass rush ever since. Well, no, they didn't trade. They traded Quinn Williams, but they just need help at pass rush in general. So I don't hate it for the Jets side just to get a good to okay pass rusher. And obviously the Bengals weren't going to pay him, or it looks like Hendrickson either. So we'll see what the Bengals do at edge rusher because they just have Shamar Stewart, and that's it. Next is one of the bigger signings, the Raiders getting Tyler Linderbaum on a insane contract. I mean, what's that, 20? What's the math? It's like 27 million per year for a center is insane. 60 million guaranteed. Look, I understand Tyler Linderbaum is one of the best centers in football. Maybe if not, maybe the best center in football. But I don't know. But this is why I think it makes sense. I don't I don't think it made sense for the Ravens to bring him back on that massive contract. But with the Raiders trying to build around Fernando Mendoza, following the blueprint of investing in your O line, and they're doing it early too. They're not letting their rookie quarterback suffer behind a horrible O line, then being like, oh, maybe we should invest in the O line to help them out. No, they're doing that now. And they have the money to spend. They can afford Tyler Linderbaum at $81 million, where the Ravens couldn't. So I don't mind the contract from the Raiders side. I would have minded it. I don't know if the word from the Ravens side. So I think overall, not a bad move on both parts. Linderbaum gets a massive, massive payday from the Raiders. Algier goes from the Falcons to the Cardinals. This is I thought Algier was going to go back to the Falcons just because him and Bijan work so well together. He's one of the best backups in football. Now he goes to Arizona. We'll see if James Conner stays a Cardinal. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals move on from James Conner. But right now, Conner's still on the team, recovering from an injury. Algier now gets to come in with guys like Trey Benson, James Conner, and he's the guy that you don't necessarily want as your number one running back, but if he's your backup, if he's in a split backfield, great guy to have. And again, one of the better backups. But Bijan's now alone, and Jahmyr Gibbs is now alone as the true running back ones on those teams. So if you're all your fantasy football players out there, those are the guys. Speaking of running backs, Saints signed Travis Etienne. It was a decent contract, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not surprised the Jags let him go, considering they got Bashal Tootin, who I really like. He now gets to be RB1 there in Jacksonville. Maybe they bring in another depth guy just to, because maybe you don't want Tootin to be your true number one, but maybe if he's your 1A, 1B with another guy, you're fine with that. So they're likely going in that direction. Etienne now goes to the Saints. He's from New Orleans, I think, which is why a lot of people were predicting him to go to the Saints. It's a big contract, but Etienne's really good. The Saints need to build around Tyler Shough. I like it for New Orleans. Kamara, we'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara because he's now out of there. You're not going to pay Etienne and keep Kamara, especially because you have so many good backups already on the team with Kendre Miller. And there's another, forgetting his name, there's another running back that they think drafted this year or last year was also good. But to have that number one guy in Etienne, I like it for the Saints. Titans, this is the first of the Titans' many, many splurges they made this offseason. Because just like the Raiders and the Jets, they had tons of salary cap to spend, and they spent it. And the first one was Wan'Dale Robinson. We actually have the contract right here. 4 years, $80 million. It's a hefty contract for Wan'Dale Robinson. But you need to build around Cam Ward. He has no one to throw the ball to. That's not what Alec Yomanor and Gunnar Helm, because Chigakonku's a free agent, and that he needs people to throw the ball to. And Wan'Dale Robinson's a very good receiver. It does feel like a little bit of an overpay, just a little bit. But again, when you're trying to get guys to play in Tennessee, you might need to overpay a little bit. And the question is, did they get better at receiver by bringing in Wan'Dale Robinson? And I think the answer is yes. So I think it makes sense for a team like the Titans to bring in Wan'Dale Robinson even at that contract. There's the ETN salary, 4 years, $52 million. Raiders get Jalen Nailor. He's been stuck behind Jefferson and Addison, and as a receiver 3, he was very good. And now he gets to be. Where would he be on the Raiders depth chart? Because right now they have Jack Beck, and that's about it. So he's like their receiver 2, maybe even receiver 3 if they add another guy, because again they still have tons of money to spend. Another weapon for Fernando Mendoza. You got him some help on the O-line. You got Genty still. You got Bowers still. I really like Jalen Nailor, and now he gets to have a more prominent role on the Raiders. So I don't hate it. I think Nailor can do good in this more important role, because you saw him have good production even as the third receiver in Minnesota. Saints get David Edwards on a deal worth up to 15 per year. I think that's a steal for David Edwards. Very good guard for Buffalo last year. Saints really needed help on the O-line. And the fact that it's up to 15 million per year, which means he might not even make 15 million per year. But those could be like bonuses that are like play every game, which he could easily do. And if he does that, then obviously it's worth paying him more than that. But David Edwards, very good guard. I think it's a very good signing for the Saints. You already got ETN. You bring in David Edwards to help block. You have 2 very good tackles in Kelvin Banks and Fuaga, who you drafted in the last 2 first rounds of the last 2 drafts. So far, I'm really liking the Saints offseason. And then the big one of Mike Evans going to the Niners. It became clear and clear and clear that he was going to leave Tampa Bay. It's going to be weird seeing him play for a team that's not the Bucs. But I think if you're San Fran, this is a good move. Now, I think they gave him a 3-year contract, which is a little lengthy for old man Mike Evans, who seems to potentially retire. Seems like he might retire at any given offseason. Like he might have retired this season. He might retire next season. He might retire the next season. But maybe he plays out a 3-year contract, and maybe he signed it because he's like, I got 3 more years in me. But I think if you're San Fran, this is a very good move. Outside of Ricky Pearsall, you don't have anything because Brandon Ayuk's gone. Jawan Jennings is likely gone. You got DeMarcus Robinson? He might be a free agent too. Who knows? But you needed something outside of Ricky Pearsall. You get one of the better veteran receivers in the league. Mike Evans is still one of the best receivers in football. He was banged up last year, but if he can be healthy for you, it's a great second weapon alongside Pearsall in that receiver room. Because who knows when Kittle's coming back? I think didn't he tear his Achilles in the playoffs? I think that's what happened to Kittle. So I don't even know when Kittle's going to be back. But you got Tonjes, Evans, McCaffrey, Pearsall. It's not bad. Then the Buccaneers also, on top of losing Mike Evans, they lose Jamel Dean to Pittsburgh for 3 years, $36 million. I really like this signing for Pittsburgh. Jamel Dean's a good corner, and it's not an insane contract. You needed help outside. You needed help at corner. You got Jalen Ramsey, who's now more of a safety, to be honest. You have Joey Porter Jr. You needed your other guy alongside Ramsey, who's again kind of just a defensive back at this point, in Joey Porter. You needed that guy, and I think Jamel Dean can easily be that for Pittsburgh and just add to the great defense that Pittsburgh has. I think this is a great move for Pittsburgh. And Tampa Bay, it's getting interesting for Tampa Bay. You lose Mike Evans, you lose Jamel Dean. They did bring Kate Otten back, though. There's Kenneth Walker in his Chiefs uniform. Then the Bears go and get Devin Bush. They released Tremaine Edmonds before free agency started, so they replace him with Devin Bush on a 3-year, $30 million deal. He had a great first year in Pittsburgh, then kind of dealt with some injuries, didn't play his best. Then he goes to Cleveland and plays the best football of his career, at least since his rookie year. And he capitalizes on that with a nice 3-year, $30 million contract for the Bears. Again, they move on from Edmonds. I think they still have TJ Edwards. So now you got Edwards and Devin Bush. I think him and Edmonds are pretty similar, so I don't think this is like anything crazy. I think if anything else, it's they're just them swapping linebackers. Like I think Edmonds was a little bit pricey for them, so they wanted to clear cap. They got a slightly cheaper option, Devin Bush, who I still think is a very good option. I don't hate it for the Bears at all. Interesting that the Browns let him go. I feel like they could have paid him for 3 years, $10 million per year. But I guess they're full in on Carson Schlesinger being the best linebacker there. Then we get Jahan Dotson going to the Falcons. He was stuck behind Smith and AJ Brown. He now gets to be the second best receiver in Atlanta behind Drake London. They bring Zacchaeus back. They did get rid of Mooney though, so it's Zacchaeus, Drake London, and Jahan Dotson. So we'll see what Dotson can do in his new role as receiver two. It makes sense for Philly to let him leave and not pay him as their third best receiver. And it makes sense for Atlanta to try and take a chance on Jahan Dotson because if he can live up to that potential he had when he was drafted, it's a great move for Atlanta. Then the Browns get Zion Johnson on a 3-year, $50 million. Don't know if I'd pay any Chargers guard a lot of money. You saw what happened with that offensive line, especially on the interior. It wasn't good. So was it Zion Johnson's fault? I don't know. But if I'm looking at that Chargers offensive line, personally, I'm not paying anyone who play on that offensive line. But the Browns pick up Zion Johnson. They need help for whoever quarterback they have, whether it's Shador, Gabriel, or whatever. They need some help at the offensive line. They still need to add somebody at tackle, I think. But Zion Johnson, we'll see what he can do maybe on a better offensive line that's not the Chargers minus their two star tackles. Because maybe it was just a whole mess and it wasn't really Zion Johnson being bad. He was just the whole offensive line was bad and this wasn't necessarily Zion Johnson's fault. But it feels like a little bit too much money for my liking. I would rather get David Edwards if I'm Cleveland. But I guess if I'm David Edwards, I'd rather go to New Orleans than Cleveland. So that might just been the situation there. Then the Titans get John Franklin Myers from the Broncos. Very good D-lineman. Really like John Franklin Myers. It was probably going to be hard for Tennessee or for Denver to keep him because they already have Zach Allen. They got so much invested in the pass rushers. They probably were just going to easily get priced out of John Franklin Myers, especially when a team like Tennessee, who, as we see, has tons and tons of money, can just throw him 3 years, $60 million. I really like the move for Tennessee. They need somebody alongside Jeffrey Simmons, and it makes complete sense that Denver got outpriced for their second best interior D line because obviously Zach Allen is the number one guy there. Chargers bring in Charlie Kolar on a 3-year, $24 million deal as a rotational depth tight end alongside guys like Gadsden. Not the biggest move. He's a solid tight end. We'll see what Baltimore does because they probably should add somebody alongside Mark Andrews. But the Chargers now get a good backup in Charlie Kolar. Giants get Tremaine Edmonds on a 3-year, $36 million deal. They cut Bobby Okereke before free agency, and they picked up a different linebacker that got cut before free agency in Tremaine Edmonds. Good linebacker. I like the move for the Giants. Similar how the Bears kind of just replaced Tremaine Edmonds with a slightly cheaper version in Devin Bush. That's slightly worse, but not by much. The Giants kind of did the same thing with Okereke and Edmonds, so I don't hate the move at all. Solid move for the Giants. The Titans got Cordell Flott from the Giants, 3-year, $45 million. Another Giant going to Tennessee. Their third big move. Wan'Dale, Franklin Myers, and now Cordell Flott. Good corner. I like the move for the Titans. They need help at corner. They have a ton of money to spend. Why not get a good corner like Cordell Flott? Bengals get Chiefs safety Brian Cook. So the Chiefs now lost McDuffie. They lost Watson, and now they lost Brian Cook. Cincinnati uses the money they have to get a good safety. I think the Chiefs picked up Alohi Gilman earlier today. So instead of paying Cook, they go slightly cheaper and get Gilman, which I think makes sense. Bengals have more money. They spend. They need help at safety. I think it makes sense both ways. Broncos bring back J.K. Dobbins. They didn't really get to see the full potential of him and R.J. Harvey together because Dobbins kind of got hurt. But before he got hurt, he was playing very well. So I think it's a good move to bring him back, especially because the injury probably lowered his value too. Titans get another corner. They just got Cordell Flott. Now they get Alontae Taylor on a 3-year, $60 million deal. Love this. Alontae Taylor, great corner. And now you have a very good cornerback duo in Cordell Flott and Alontae Taylor. And the Saints, we'll see what they do at corner because they lost a good one here in Alontae Taylor. Commanders get Marcus Mariota back as their backup quarterback. But then they also spend big money on Odafe Oweh from the Chargers. Chargers lose out on Oweh, bring Mac back. It was probably going to be one or the other two, whether they brought Mac back or Oweh. But I guess they went the cheaper deal, the cheaper route, and paid Mac like $18 million. And they let Washington spend big money on Oweh. So Commanders, they get their pass rusher. They had tons of money. I expected them to splurge at a pass rusher, whether that was Hendrickson, Oweh, Phillips, whatever. They end up doing it on Odafe Oweh for 4 years, $100 million. Similar to Jalen Phillips, maybe a little bit of an overpay, but at a premium position like pass rusher, I don't think it's the end of the world. He's still young as well. He had a great season, second half of the season once he got traded to the Chargers. I don't hate the move at all. Speaking of pass rushers, the Bengals get edge rusher Boye Mafe, 3 years, $60 million. Another Seahawk loss. All they've retained so far is Shaheed and I think Josh Jobe. But they lose Kenneth Walker, they lose Kobe Bryant, and they lose Boye Mafe. Solid, good player. I like Boye Mafe. I think this is a good move for Cincinnati. They lose Asai, they lose Hendrickson. They needed somebody, right, to try and sack the quarterback, and Boye Mafe can be that. I understand why Seattle let him walk, and I understand why Cincinnati paid him. Then the Falcons get two on a 1-year deal worth like $8. It's like $1 million, I think. Like the vet minimum of all vet minimums. They paid him nothing. And now they got two lefty injury-prone quarterbacks in Michael Penix and Tua. We'll see it again if it doesn't work and they lose games because he doesn't play well. Guess what? You paid him nothing, and you can draft a quarterback next year and a much deeper quarterback class than this year. So I don't hate the move at all. It cost them nothing, and it's only a 1-year deal. And at least maybe some quarterback competition can maybe make Michael Penix step his game up when he comes back from his injury too. So I don't hate it at all for Atlanta. Then the Cardinals got Gardner Minshew as their quarterback, so I think Brissett's going to be the starter, and Minshew's the backup. I don't know what's going on in Arizona. Washington re-signs Laremy Tunsil. Good contract. Laremy Tunsil, really good player. Don't hate it at all. Raiders get Kwity Paye from the Colts on a deal. We don't know the years. It just says a deal worth $16 million per year. Kwity Paye, fine pass rusher. Raiders lose out the trade Max Crosby, frees up some money, and they get a good player in Kwity Paye. He's no Max Crosby, obviously, but similar to how the Cowboys trade away Micah Parsons and get a good player in return in Rashawn Gary. Now Rashawn Gary is probably better than Kwity Paye. But the Raiders trade Max Crosby and get a solid guy in Kwity Paye in return just to give them something off the edge. Because they couldn't just lose Max Crosby and run it with Tyree Wilson and whatever. They had to get something. So Kwity Paye at least is something, and he's better than nothing. Broncos release Dre Greenlaw, so that'll be interesting to see where he goes. Saints get Noah Fant on a 2-year deal as a tight end, 1A, 1B with Jawan Johnson. Don't hate it. He's a solid backup tight end. Then the Raiders get two linebackers. They get Quay Walker from the Packers and Nakobe Dean from the Eagles. Georgia teammates reuniting in Las Vegas. That'll go well, won't it? I like both these moves. Raiders needed help at linebacker. As we've seen, they have tons and tons and tons of money to spend, and they spent it, that's for sure. I like Quay Walker. I like Nakobe Dean. It made sense why Green Bay and Philly moved on from them, especially if a team with tons of money is just going to pay them more than you can. And now the Raiders went from very bad linebackers to a very, very good linebacker duo in Walker and Dean. As I mentioned earlier, Seahawks bring back Rashid Shaheed. They couldn't afford to lose every single free agent they had, so they bring Rashid Shaheed back. Then Panthers get Kenny Pickett as a backup quarterback. I think he's a very good backup quarterback. Don't hate it. Texans get Reed Blankenship on a 3-year $24. I really love this signing. Safety could have been a need for them in the draft, but now they don't have to draft safety if they don't want to, and they can go more best player available. Probably interior D lineman if I'm guessing, or offensive lineman if you're Houston. But safety was a position they could have drafted, so this kind of doesn't force them to go safety because they pick up a very good one in Reed Blankenship on only $8 million per year. He gets to join one of the best defenses in football. Great move for Houston. Then the Cardinals get Kendrick Bourne on a 2-year deal. He had that stretch with Mac Jones where he played unbelievable. Then Purdy comes in. The Niners get healthier receiver. Kendrick Bourne's kind of pushed to the side. But in San Fran, you got Marvin Harrison and why am I forgetting the Cardinals receiver that went crazy last year? Michael Wilson. Yeah. You got Michael Wilson, you got Marvin Harrison. Kendrick Bourne's a good receiver 3, receiver 4. Don't hate it. Panthers get Devin Lloyd. This was surprising. 3 years, 45 seems like an absolute steal for a guy who was an all-pro last year. That $15 million per year. Devin Lloyd goes to the Panthers. They now address linebacker, their biggest hole. They got Jalen Phillips at edge rusher, another one of their biggest holes. And that defense now looks pretty good with them too. Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, and others. Really love this move for the Panthers, especially at the contract you got him when he had teams like Cincinnati trying to get him, who definitely had more money to spend on him. The Jags couldn't get him back. Love this move for the Panthers. And I don't understand why the Jags didn't bring him back at that contract. Steelers get Rico Dowdle on a 2-year deal. You lose Kenneth Gainwell, so you replace him with another very good backup alongside Warren. Don't hate it. Solid move for Pittsburgh. You just swap backup running backs / 50-50 running backs. He'll probably just split carries with Jaylen Warren, just like Kenneth Gainwell did. And there we go. The Ravens lose Alohi Gilman to the Chiefs. The Chiefs lose Brian Cook and replace him with Alohi Gilman. I mentioned it in my free agency prediction video when the Ravens traded for Gilman. Their defense was so much better. So that's why I thought they were going to bring him back. But another guy the Ravens lost. They lost Linderbaum. They lost Gilman. I think that's it. They lost Draymond Jones as well. Chiefs, I don't hate losing Brian Cook because they got a cheaper option in the Alohi Gilman. They still need help at corner, but at least at safety, they're pretty solid. And then they also bring back Tyquan Thornton on a 2-year deal. I like it. He adds some speed for Mahomes to the offense, so I don't hate it. Patriots sign Elijah Vera Tucker, so they're now spending some of their money. Decent, solid guard. I don't hate it. You trade Garrett Bradbury earlier. I know he's the center, but you trade Bradbury away. You need some help on the interior line. You saw how they played in the Super Bowl. It wasn't that good. And Vera Tucker's a solid guard, so I don't hate it. I doubt he cost them a ton of money as well. I don't think there's much more. Greg Newsome goes to the Giants. Got traded mid-season from the Browns to the Jags. Decent corner. You lose Cordell Flott to Tennessee. You needed somebody. Greg Newsome's not horrible just to have somebody because they needed some help at corner, especially if they lost Cordell Flott, which they did. Bills get Dawson Knox back. The Browns get Quincy Williams on a 2-year, $13 million deal. Decent linebacker. Definitely, he had that really good season where he made the Pro Bowl. He might have made All-Pro. But then he didn't have the best season last year. Browns get him on a pretty solid contract, like 2 years, $13 million for Quincy Williams, who if he played like he did last year, it's probably worth 2 years, 13. But if he plays like he did like 2 years ago, whatever that year was, this is a steal of a contract. So you lose out on Devin Bush and you go a much cheaper route with Quincy Williams, and now you have him and Schlesinger. Don't mind it at all. The Lions get Pacheco to be their new backup running back to Gibbs. We'll see. I'm interested to see what type of workload Pacheco gets because he's not going to get a David Montgomery workload. So it's interesting because obviously Gibbs is the number one. As a backup, I really like Pacheco. I didn't like how he was the number one guy for the Chiefs, but as a backup, I really like Pacheco. Texans extend Keami Fairbairn, makes sense, one of the better kickers in football. They also signed Braden Smith on a 2-year deal worth up to $25. Love that. Talk about a team that needs help on offensive line. That's the Houston Texans. And when doing all these mock drafts, I've noticed that the Texans, there's not really any offensive linemen that make sense for them to draft at their 30th, 28th, 9th pick, whatever they have. So this way, they don't feel the need to reach for an offensive lineman in the first round, or maybe even reach for an offensive lineman in the second round. Although they should probably still draft some guys on that offensive line. But bringing in a good veteran like Braden Smith makes perfect sense to me. We mentioned this earlier. Geno Smith gets traded to the Jets back in New York, gets drafted by the Jets, goes to 40 different teams, and comes back on the Jets. Now, it's a quarterback room with him and Justin Fields. I'm not really sure what to think of that, but Geno Smith definitely didn't play his best football last year on the Raiders, but it was also on the Raiders. But I guess now he's on the Jets, so it's not like he got a better situation. Especially now looking at the moves the Raiders have made, I'd rather be on the Raiders than the Jets if I'm Geno. So we'll see what he does on New York, but I'm not expecting much. And then the last major signing, and we got two more. We got two more signings. Romeo Doubs headed to the Patriots. Patriots get their big splash at receiver. They still could trade for A.J. Brown, I saw. They're not out of the A.J. Brown sweepstakes, despite Romeo Doubs coming here. They needed help at receiver, especially if they lost. Especially by getting rid of Diggs. It's what Kayshon Boutte and Mac Hollins there at receiver. And Kyle Williams. I do like Kyle Williams too. But they needed somebody. Doubs obviously didn't seem like he was going to come back to the Packers with all the receivers they have and the money he was going to make. Very good player. I really like Doubs. I think this is a very good contract for Doubs too, especially with the amount of money the Patriots had. I really like this move, especially if they get A.J. Brown. If your receiver room is Boutte, Hollins, Brown, Doubs, and Kyle Williams, that's really good. So I like this move as one of your top receivers. And then the last big move that happened as I'm recording this video is the Jets signing Nahshon Wright to a 1-year, $5.5 million deal. In my predictions, I predicted Nahshon Wright to go to the Jets, but I thought it's because the Jets were going to overpay him out of desperate need for a corner. But they actually ended up only signing him for $5.5 million for 1 year. That's like nothing. So I think this is an amazing pickup for the Jets. I was going to be if they paid him a lot of money just out of desperate need to get a corner upgrade, I was going to be a little skeptical of it. But to get Nahshon Wright for pennies on the dollar, I think it's an amazing move for the Jets. Because after trading Sauce Gardner, they don't really have a lot at corner. And he's not the most consistent guy. Like, he got all the interceptions, but he also gave up a lot of plays and coverage. So he's kind of up and down, but an up and down corner and guess what? The Jets had no interceptions last year. So even if Nahshon Wright gets beat here and there in coverage, if he can get his, 7 interceptions, that's 7 more interceptions than the Jets had last year. So I love this pickup for New York. And again, that is it. It's 4:20 p.m. on Tuesday, the 10th, as I'm recording this video. So if anything happens after that, you'll find my reactions to those when we react to every team and grade every team's free agency in like 2-3 days. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, and I'll in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts on your team's free agency or just any free agents in general, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.